You know that game where you start drawing and then another person finishes it? You know the one. Apparently it's called Exquisite Corpse, according to ChatGPT. Anyways, what if we took the concept and applied it to aircraft building and quote-unquote simulation game Flyout? Well, that's exactly what me and fellow YouTuber Mic22 did. I came up with a list of 8 different parts of the plane and split them evenly amongst me and Mic22. Mic22 chose wings, tail, fuselage and landing gear, leaving me with the engines, cockpit, interior and paint scheme. Let's get on with the build. To start, I chose to begin with refining the shape of the cockpit. The file that Mick had sent me had the general shape of a cockpit, but since the cockpit was part of my assigned parts, I decided that I would pretty much start the cockpit from scratch. In order to create the windscreen of the cockpit, I flattened segments of the cockpit at the top along the y-axis and then moved the vertices forwards in a curved shape. This allowed the top and the bottom of the windscreen to be flat if you're looking at it from the front, much like a real airliner. While this technique can have good results, it can also lead to somewhat flat areas above the windscreen since a larger length is covered by just a single segment. Luckily, I found that in this case it wasn't too noticeable. However, it can become a bit of an issue in other cases. So you can see at the moment it kind of looks a little bit flatter than the areas around it, but it's not too noticeable, so I thought it was fine in this build. Since there weren't enough faces on the windscreen, I had to make the frame spokes out of 16 vertice fuselage pieces that I fit to the shape of the windscreen. You can kind of see that happening right now. It does look, pretty good mostly, but in some places the shaping of the windscreen is a little bit bent, like inwards, which shouldn't be the case, but it is. And in those cases it's kind of looks a bit stupid if you look at it too closely, but you don't really see it very closely, so it's not really a big deal, and now I've pointed it out, you know about it, so whoops. Anyways, going on to the engines now. So I started by putting the engine on the plane, then entering the engine editor so I could kind of edit it obviously and look at all the specs. It was very heavily based on the engines of a Boeing 747 because I'm basic and that's the one airliner that I know. But it's slightly less powerful than a Boeing 747 engine, I'm pretty sure. The specs are kind of close but slightly lower. And similar to a Boeing 747, it has 4 of them on the entire plane, so you'll probably see that eventually. At first I tried putting it at the back, but that ended up meaning that the weight was too far backwards and it would tip over backwards and wouldn't fly. So I changed that out, and well, you'll see in a bit. I'll talk about it when I get to it. Anyways, this was the second time that I'd attempted making the engines. The first thing I was intending to do was make the engines, but I tried and I failed. So I gave up. I was like, you know what, fine, I'll do this later, and I did do it later. This is later now, but I decided instead to start with the cockpit, and I cut that bit out because it was just kind of me looking around thinking, well, what do I do, instead of actually doing anything. The colouring is also very heavily based on a 747, but I added this kind of spiky look to the back of the exhaust on the engines, and I tried to do it for the cowling around the fan as well, but it doesn't really divide well because it's 32, so I couldn't figure out how to make it look decent, so I just gave up. And as you can see here, first flight test with the engines and it just flipped over, so I moved them forwards a little bit, but I do end up moving them again. I forgot to add the APU for a while, so you'll see the APU is one of the I add it much later, I'll point it out when I add it, but I did add an APU, don't worry. At this point you probably noticed that giant observatory deck thing in the middle of the aircraft, which was Mick's thing. He added it because of course he was the one who made the fuselage, and that's part of the fuselage. It's definitely an interesting part of the design. I quite like it, it makes it unique. There's another thing that makes it unique as well, but we'll get to that when I move the positioning of the engines. That's a bit of a spoiler, yeah. But yeah, it ends up being a pretty unique aircraft. Look, here we go. So this is what I'm talking about. I decided that I had to kind of put the engines on top of the wings. Now, I'm sure there are reasons why this isn't done in real life, and if you know, please tell me, because I don't know, I'd like to know. But I decided to put it on top because I couldn't fit it underneath the wing because the landing gear was too short and the wings were kind of lower down, and there's no bend to the wings, they're quite flat, so it doesn't bend upwards, so I couldn't fit them underneath. And the only other option would be to kind of alter the wing shape such that like they bend upwards or make the landing gear taller, and that would be altering Mick's decisions, which I don't want to do because that kind of defeats the purpose of the challenge. So I just decided to go with putting them on top, which I think makes it look unique, and I think it looks pretty cool. But obviously structural and noise reasons and probably aerodynamics as well, it probably disrupts the laminar flow over the top of the wing, and I can think of like a couple of reasons why it's probably not a good idea, but I think it looks cool, and I think that it allows me to not edit the way that Mick's setup was. So I think that's probably the way that I should have gone with, and it's the way that I went with, so I'm happy with that. I put these kind of windows on the side. I used the O key on the keyboard because you can like type text, right? And I ended up deleting it later. So, if you're trying to use this as a tutorial for some reason, don't follow that. Just don't put it kind of helped with me knowing where I wanted the windows to be. But yeah, as you can see, I'm kind of working on the interior now, putting on like an interior cabin, on the inside. So that I can then add like seats and stuff, which is kind of my favorite bit of it. And we'll get to it as well, and I'll talk about it. But yeah, I'm pretty proud of how I managed to do most of this interior. So yeah, probably my favorite bit. I changed the color on the inside so it's white because have you ever seen an inside of an airliner that's like bare metal? No, I know I haven't. Okay, I mean maybe like a Electra or something, I don't know. But still, the point is that I changed it to white, like an airliner interior. And now we're modeling the seats in Blender. So this is one of the cooler things. It allows you to import meshes, so you can import an OBJ file directly into Flyout, which kind of allows you to model your own seats or your own whatever, and, in my case, seats, right? And then just import them directly into Flyout. And it can be a little bit buggy, but usually you'll get an error that's like, oh, we could not find the file, right? If you just reload, it usually tends to fix it because there's a folder inside the craft file that contains all the imported meshes. It shouldn't be an issue. I mean, if you get the error, just reload it, because I will be sharing this craft file with you all. It'll be on my Discord server, so you can join that. Shameless self-promotion. But yeah, I decided that I would make the seats out in Blender as opposed to in-game using the fuselage pieces, because I felt like I would be able to make better looking seats by doing it in Blender. And plus the part count, it keeps the part count lower. Probably makes it better for performance, I'd imagine, since there's probably less vertices if I make it like I did here than with multiple different fuselage pieces and so on. So I'm happy I went with this option, and I'm glad with how it came out. And the coloring I went with, so when I was doing it in Blender, I went with a sort of generic blue because airline they're always blue, but I decided to go with a red instead when I actually added the textures. And I did keep the business class as blue, but the economy was red, like a bit like Virgin Atlantic, But yeah, no, I'm pretty glad with how this seat came out. I gave it one of those little trays on the back, so you can put your stuff on a tray, unless you're sitting on a sitting on a door seat, in which case sorry, but you don't get that. Just here I was basically lining up the interior walls with the exterior ones so I could have the windows line up and stuff. At the moment it's just a kind of flat window, like no distinct window circles like you usually have on airliners, and that will change. I do eventually add the individual windows, but this just means I kind of get a gist of where the windows are, and all the gaps in between are obviously for emergency exits or doors, I did end up kind of swapping around where all the bits are. It's perhaps not the best idea to have the first class in the middle like it is, but because of the way that the plane is designed with that kind of dome in the middle, it only made sense to have the first class in the middle, so I kind of had to put it there. I did try a bit of like painting on the on the cockpit, but it looked really stupid because of the low resolution, and I couldn't really increase the resolution enough for it to look good. So I kind of gave up with that. But yeah, you can see that red that I was talking about. I also added other details on the interior, including toilets and the flashing lights for seatbelts and no smoking. So I don't know. I felt like I just felt like giving a lot of detail to the interior, because I don't know. I wanted it to look good. It looks pretty good, I think, in the end. But it also took a very long time, and I mean a very, very long time. In fact, I'll check how much time it took right now, and I'll get back to you. So overall, the build time that I spent on the craft was around about, let's see. So the file that I got sent from Mick had a build time of 2 hours and 13 minutes. Now, if I go and look at the finished product, build time, then that's 17 hours and 39 minutes. So approximately 15 hours I spent on this, which is mostly just the interior work. So yeah, interiors take time, and I also made the lights actually work. So the seatbelt and smoking lights, they actually like light up with an action group. That's the KSP term. You know what? You'll see it in the cinematic when I do the cinematic. So you can see I'm deleting all the seats. That's because, well, I don't know if that's the reason I was doing it then, but effectively, the seat model was slightly too small, so I had to scale it up by 1.1 to make it, the correct size. And also, I didn't want it. I had them originally like in all of the classes had the same seats, but I changed that out so that the first class has different seats and the business class has different seats. For a while I had a bit of an issue where the seatbelt and smoking lights didn't seem to work, and it turned out that I was just being really stupid, and it was because there was literally no batteries on the entire aircraft. So despite the fact that the engines did have alternators and were producing power, because there was no place to store the power, it couldn't actually be used for any of the lights. So you might have seen that I was like trying to test it and nothing was happening, and yeah, I don't know, I kept troubleshooting it, and I never realized that the issue was kind of obvious. I considered for a bit doing a hold as well, modeling the hold, but I figured it really wouldn't add that much since the hold is kind of empty without any baggage in it, and I didn't really want to do the extra work because I was already doing, all the interiors for all the classes and stuff, and that was quite a lot of effort. So I chose not to do that in the end. But it wouldn't be too difficult because it's quite simple, but I just felt it was not, you weren't going to see it anyways, so there wasn't really a point in doing it. I added the overhead lockers, and for some reason I just decided to put it in all the classes, which is not where it should be, so I eventually removed it from business. Actually, I didn't put it in all of them, I just put it in economy and business, but I really shouldn't have put it in business class, so I did remove that in the end. But I don't know, I think they look pretty good. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't have set up the seats like I did. I did 2 rows of 4. Maybe it would have been better to do a 3 and maybe a 2 in the middle. But you live and you learn, right? Still, I kind of added doors between the sections. The doors are just kind of rectangles. They don't do anything. They don't open like the exterior doors do, and there's not even a gap between them, but it kind of gives the idea that there's supposed to be a door there. It doesn't really matter because, of course, it's a game at the end of the day. The detail is just, it's all fake anyways, so it doesn't really matter. But still, I added the signs above as well, so you can kind of tell which classes were which areas were which. I don't know, I think it came out pretty good, the interior bits, but yeah, let me know if you think I did a terrible job. So here I am going on to the cockpit. The cockpit was very heavily inspired, and this is maybe a bit of an interesting decision, but I decided to base mine heavily off the Buran spaceplane, because I thought it looked cool. So while most of the aircraft is actually more, I don't know, Western styled, I guess, the cockpit is actually more Russian, I guess. Then again, I don't know. I thought it looked pretty good though. Very industrial though, so maybe not suited particularly for an airliner, but I thought it came out pretty cool. And a lot of it's just complete bullshit, like me just putting random bits and bobs in places because I didn't really know what to go in the cockpit. Like, the thing is with flyout is that there's only so much you can add to a cockpit, because there's only like so many dials and you know, things in the game. So the rest of it is just kind of like fake stuff, you know, like, I don't know, there's just not really all the stuff that you would want. So you can't really fill it out very easily. But, you know, I managed to make it look half decent, so pretty happy with that. To those of you who know about my other YouTube channel, Salamanderco, it probably isn't much of a surprise that I decided to go with a space plane of all things to base the cockpit off of, because, well, you know, that channel is mostly KSP. But yeah, I mean, I guess I did kind of let my other interests bleed into this, and I don't know, I've never been much of an aviation geek, you know, an av geek or whatever. I mean, you know, I like a bit of planes. Planes are cool, right? But I've never, like, been one to call myself a fan of airplanes. Especially not airliners. Never been much of an airliner fan. I think they're cool, but I've never been like, wow, that's an A350, or wow, you know, like, I don't know. I think Concorde is cool, and I think the airliners are kind of cool, but I'm much more of a, like, other kind of, you know, I'm more of a space nerd, you know, but still, I don't know, I found a way to merge the two, you know, so it came out pretty good, the cockpit, I think, and, you know, I managed to mix my interests of, you know, space in with the collaboration of making a plane. See, I did suggest originally to Mick that we should do a Kerbal Space Program mission. Now, Mick isn't perhaps the best at Kerbal Space Program, so maybe it wasn't such a great idea, but who knows, maybe you'll see a collaboration between me and Mick and Kerbal Space Program, and see how that goes, but yeah, I don't know. Much like the rest of the aircraft, half of the name of the aircraft was contributed by me, and the other half by Mick, so we both have our own, you know, companies. Mine is Salo Comtat or Sacco, and Mick uses Mick Industries for his videos. So we did SC/MI for the letters, and then for the number, I just asked Mick for a random number, and I think it came out to 374. So overall, it's the SC/MI 374, and the name, because, you know, they sometimes have nicknames. For us, we went with, well, one of us would choose an adjective, the other one would choose a noun. So Mick went with view, and I went with gilded. So it's the SCMI 374 Gilded View, which is a very, you know, posh sounding name. But I think it fits, you know, because it's kind of got that kind of, you know, dome around it that gives it, you know, a view, I guess. And I don't know, it makes it seem like it's fancy. It kind of is fancy, right? I mean, I don't know. I think it's cool. I think it's a cool name. I think it's a half decent name. Yeah, I mean, I probably wouldn't be able to come with a much better name, so yeah, I don't know. Now, if you want to fly the plane yourself, there are 3 different extra inputs that you ought to know about. So, numpad 7, which I'm sure you'll probably have to rebound if you don't have a numpad. Sorry about that. I just usually use a numpad for my keybinds. But numpad 7 is the smoking light. Numpad 8 is the seatbelt light, and numpad 9 does all the doors. So, you know, it shouldn't be too difficult to rebind them if you're not able to, you know, use a numpad. But those are the different inputs. Now, you might have noticed that there's there's some doors right around the center of the fuselage in the first class area, and you're probably wondering, hey, don't those go directly into the exhaust of the engines? Now, yeah, that's true, they do. Which is why they're emergency only. So only use those doors in an emergency, please. I put a sign above that says emergency use only. And here I am just modelling the business class seats, because, you know, they're business class, they've got to be fancier, and it means they have like a little screen on them and a divider, so you don't have to look at anyone else, I guess. I don't know, I've never been on business class. I just looked up references for business class, and then that's what I did, you know, based it off. But, I mean, if you've been on business class, you know, comment and be like, wow, this is accurate, or wow, this is terrible, you should never make a flyout video ever again. And, you know, I'll take either one, really. But yeah, no, I'm pretty happy with how the seat came out. I know I keep saying I'm pretty happy with how a thing came out, but, you know, I don't know, I'm just pretty happy with how it all came out. Although I did have a slight issue, being that it kind of is the wrong way round, so in flyout, when you put something like on the other side of an aircraft, it flips it, and that includes the models, right? So unless you have like don't mirror turned on, but then that ruins symmetry. So basically that means that I had to place it on the quote-unquote wrong side, the other side to where it was supposed to be, and then drag it over to the other side in order for it to be oriented the correct way, which is like, you know, not the best way to do it. But I don't know, I gave the computer screen a bit of a glow, an emissive material, which I thought was pretty neat. You can see what I'm maybe you didn't see what I was talking about, but you know, believe me, okay, I had to drag it over. Yeah, you can see the emissive material. I don't know, I thought it was pretty neat. There's not very many, like, there's not a lot of space for business class seats. In fact, there's not a lot of space for any seats other than economy. So, I don't know if I did a bad job at furnishing the interior, but I don't know. I had to make these special seats for the windows because it didn't really fit with the kind of cube that I'd made for the business class seats, so I don't know. I'll probably count the amount of seats and I'll put it on the infographic that I'll make, because I'm doing that. But yeah, don't know. And as you can see here, I'm just putting in the doors, you know, put them on hinges. I kind of had to make custom doors for this end and the front end as well, because, like, well, I mean, I made custom doors for the whole thing, but you know what I mean, like, I had to reshape them specifically for that because they kind of curve inwards, so it's a little bit annoying, but you know, I don't know, I think they came out pretty decent. As I've said about pretty much everything, I think it came out well. I don't know what else to say, really. I mean, yeah, you can judge me when you fly this craft for yourself by joining my Discord server, shameless self-promotion again, and, you know, downloading the craft file, because I'll put it on my Discord server. As you can probably tell, this video is very, very, very unscripted. Now, I was originally planning to do a script, but I think you've probably seen the runtime of this video. It's 21 minutes so far, 22 minutes so far, and, like, it's not even finished yet. So, I mean, considering the fact that this build took me around, what, 15 hours in total, right? You know, that's about 15 hours of footage that most of it's been cut. Most of it's been, you know, sped up 15 times. Most of this is 15 times sped up, right? Okay, don't judge me for having basically nothing to say, okay? You can't judge me, but still. Now, I'll be completely honest with you. There was more footage. However, that footage was mostly just me putting in those you see the windows? You see how they're now circular? They weren't before, right? That was a lot of the stuff that could have been put in, right? It's just, it took way too long, okay, and I was really bored, so I kept switching tabs, and you gotta understand, most of this editing has been me cutting out bits where I've just switched tabs, and it's shown theme page of flyout, and I could have left it in, I guess. I could have recorded all that and left it in, but I just didn't really want to. It wouldn't have been interesting, so I didn't, and you're gonna have to forgive me for that, I'm afraid. But yeah, anyways, you know, doing first class stuff, put a bar with bar stools and stuff, you know, so you can, you know, get really drunk whilst flying, I guess, and, you know, it's first class, you know, they're rich, they're proper rich. I thought, hey, first class people don't need seats, they just have a bed. Well, no, they do have a seat as well, and a table, and a TV that's actually just a scaled up version of the business class one. I don't know, I think the first class thing is alright. It's maybe not the best first class in the world, but I think it's pretty decent. And, you know, I keep saying, oh, I think it's pretty good. I need to shut up. But yeah, anyways, I don't know, I'm happy with how the first class came out, and I don't know, I thought maybe I'd do 2 layers, but I thought actually no, there's not really enough space. As much as there's like the extra, like, observatory thing on the top, it's like, it doesn't really go high enough for you to add another floor, so it's just kind of like a skylight, which I think is pretty neat, you know. Now, the next part was giving it a livery, right? And I did do it, and you'll see in the cinematic, and it's not the best livery, it's basically just the flag of the country, but I didn't really want to put it in because it was just a lot of extra stuff, and it wouldn't have been interesting to watch. Anyways, I just cut that out, so you get to watch the cinematic now, and yes, the feed is cut out, the video is cut out, that's the end. Wow. Okay, so I'll fade in the cinematic, it's all dramatic and stuff, yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard this Sakalona Airlines Flight 326 to Lusara International Airport. We're running about 5 minutes behind schedule. We've just got a few bits of paperwork that we need to fill out higher in the front, but we should be able to make that time in the air as we've got a huge tailwind pushing us towards Lusara. Flight time is roughly about 3 hours, although this could be shortened by the wind. Hopefully it will, and we can get there nice and early. For now, I'll speak to you in cruise, and I'll leave you in the competent hands of our cabin crew. Saka 326, ready for taxi. Taxi via Mike Sierra November, runway 04, Saka 326. Line up on runway 04, Saka 326. Clear for takeoff, runway 04, Saka 326. Service. This contains drinks or food that you may require, and if you would like any of these items, feel free to ask the cabin crew and they will be more than happy to assist you. For now, enjoy your flight on board Sakalona Airlines.
I hope you enjoyed that little, cinematic. Yes, that was, in fact, good old Minecraft music, because it's copyright free, and I don't know any other copyright free music, so I hope you appreciated that. But still, I thought that was pretty neat. Yeah, so, anyways, goodbye, see you in another video, I guess.